You can't build your next level with your old mindset. And if you've been feeling friction lately, that's exactly why. Let's talk about outgrowing the version of you that got you here. Now I'm going to start with a little story time. Okay. Growing up, even though I made like basically straight A's in school, you could almost guarantee that my report cards would say talkative needs improvement for my conduct. And you can only imagine how this shattered my confidence over the years, and really from a subconscious level. Recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I ran into an old friend of mine from high school, Jomel. We had a blast in high school together. And it's now been about maybe 13 or 14 years since we've seen each other. And when we connected, we exchanged numbers. And again, we were catching up about where we were in life. And so, of course, I just gave him a quick jot down of, I lived in Atlanta, and then 2020, I moved back to Savannah. 2021, I met my husband. 2022, I got married. 2023, we moved to Belize. 2024, I had a baby. 2025, here I am 5 years later, still growing my business. And of course, I'm just saying these things like because this is just what I've done, right? But Jomel texted me back and said, I always knew you would do big things. And he put it in capital letters. And when I read the message, I was taken aback because when I think about myself in high school, I didn't even know I was going to do big things. Even though I went to early college, which is a dual enrollment program. And so in the ninth and 10th grade, I took ninth grade classes. And in the 10th grade, I took 11th and 12th grade classes. So that way, by the time I was a junior and a senior in high school, I was already at Savannah State University taking college classes, graduated high school with basically like what do you call them in college? Like was already a sophomore in college. I still didn't have a clue what I was gonna do then because I did not really know my identity. Hence the fact that when I did go off to college, in a year and a half, I got 8 straight F's in a row. Like, yes, fall semester, F, 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 F. Next semester, F, 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 F. Why did that happen? Because unlike what Jomel saw in me, I didn't see that version of myself. I didn't know I was going off to do great things. I went off to Atlanta with the freedom from Savannah. Like, oh, baby, I am free. Okay, I'm about to go have a blast. My mindset was more focused on going to work than it was going to class. Some of my dorm females that I stayed with, their families was off the west side of Savannah. And so if you ever heard of that movie Snow on the Bluff, her family was from the Bluff. So I enjoyed going to the Bluff and really seeing what that was about. Like Bankhead, Lee Street, like I was in Atlanta, okay? I'm talking about East Side, Lithonia, Stone Mountain, really trying to see what the city was about. And what was even more funny is that when me and Jomel connected a couple of weeks ago, he actually reminded me that the only reason why I applied to Georgia State was because he did. So I felt like I was following my friend's footsteps. And again, even though I was in an environment and went to a school called early college, I still wasn't even confident in myself to even know what I was going to do in college, right? It all was factors of me not knowing my identity. So I'm not truly just blaming fully and solely my childhood. But what I am saying is that you go through these phases of life where you have your old self. In order to get to the next level, you have to outgrow that version of your old self. So I'll explain how I outgrew the version of me that didn't really know myself. Once I got kicked out of college on academic probation, I had to come back home to Savannah. And even then, I felt so disappointed. But I mostly felt like I was disappointing my mom. And see, that was a problem also, that if you are inside of a space where you're seeing your successes, but your successes or your opportunities, not failures, your successes or your lessons, if when you are accomplishing your success or experiencing your lesson or your opportunity, they're only based off of you pleasing somebody else, you're not going to be inside of a space where it's time for you to outgrow your old self. Because you're still not even clear on yourself because you're attaching your experiences to what others may think about you. So, because when I moved back and I first had that mindset, if I just disappointed my mom and still didn't even know who Breye'l was, guess what I did? The same thing I did in Atlanta. I came back and I attached to friends who were still just partying and drinking and having a blast. Now, of course, a lot of this is contributed to me being like 20 years old. But at the same time, age doesn't matter because I know that there's people listening to this podcast 20, 30, 40, 45, 50 years old where you're doing the same thing, attaching yourself to old people of your past because you're not clear on what the new version of yourself requires for you to grow into that new version. So even though when I moved back from Atlanta and moved to Savannah, I told myself and I knew like, man, I can't move back to this freaking slow place. I need that fast pace back. I still wasn't clear on who I was. So again, I did the same cycle for 6 to 8 months again. But then I had a wake up shift and I knew and I heard myself say, Breye'l, you cannot build to your next level with this old mindset. Okay, and you're experiencing friction in your life right now because your next level, what you experienced in Atlanta, that newness, it is not subjective to Atlanta. We're just talking about the feeling of knowing that your body and your mind is calling for more. I knew that I was experiencing friction, which was in contrast of the peace that I wanted. I knew that it's because I needed to change. I needed to outgrow that level of myself. I had to outgrow the friends who just found more value in going out and having drinks, but were not celebrating anything. There were so many different versions and levels of myself that I had to outgrow. It's just I was not intentional on what Breye'l needed because again, my mindset was so busy focused on um being embarrassed that I had to move back home, not wanting people to really see that I had failed and flunked out of college, not wanting my mom to feel disappointed in me, not really focusing again on what Brielle needed. And so again, that's why we're having this talk right now because I want you to know that you can outgrow the version of you that got you here. And even though if where you are, you feel great, you still can want more. And that's the reason why you're listening to the Create and Grow Your Dream Business podcast. Because here we know there's creation and then there's growth, right? There's creation and then there's growth. You having that purpose inside of you, that thing that you know that you want to do or that you've already done, that's creation mode and that's cool. When I moved off to Atlanta and I got that experience, I knew that that was creation mode because I went into another level, a different experience. I was exposed to more. I didn't know exactly that I would have queenhood and the Create and Grow Your Dream Business podcast and the Business Confidence Academy. I didn't know it would be all of this, but I knew that at that moment I had created a new opportunity for myself. But then it was time to grow. Right. So now we're going to be talking about your growth mode and what that looks like for you. And again, I'll just continue to share my story to help you see how you can implement these same concepts into your life. So I finally get it together. Okay. It's 2013, January. I finally start and get my mind together of saying, okay, again, Brielle, you had to move back home, but we're going to have to tighten up. 8 months go by, again, still doing the same thing. And it wasn't until the October, November, and December where I realized I'm losing myself. I'm still out here partying. I was still out there drinking. Thought I was in a good relationship. The relationship started failing. And guess what I was left with? Nothing. I hadn't moved back to Atlanta. I hadn't accomplished the goals that I said I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a car. I hadn't did any of those things. But guess what I did have? Money for basic necessities. And when you recognize that it's time for you to start to outgrow just having what Maslow's hierarchy of needs would call like just like the psychological safety, when you know you want more than just that, when you want purpose, when you want impact, you know it's time to outgrow the old version of yourself. So what did I do? I cracked down, okay, on myself. I ended up getting 3 jobs, but it wasn't really about the concept of getting the jobs. What it was about was me when I showed up to the jobs, the person that I was. I had to turn into the person that had to learn how to say no and turn down just going out with friends for food and drinks when we weren't celebrating anything, right? I had to turn down staying up at night all the time and just watching TV versus actually implementing, researching how do I get back to Atlanta? What would that look like? What could life be for me? Like, putting time and energy into my personal development, I had to say no to being in relationships that could not help me get to my next level. Again, personally and professionally, it's not okay for you to just have that job. It's not okay for you to just go to work. You have to start being intentional about reaching out to people who can help you get to your next level. That's the only way you'll outgrow your old self. If you think that you can just stick to you dictating your old self, you'll never grow because your mind will only continuously think the same thoughts. That's the reason why they talk about you could see successful people and they will tell you it's about having a mastermind alliance. It's about having mentors. It's about having people that can uplift you and put you inside of a space where they see the greater parts about you and help you get there. And when I finally started to make the decision within myself that I was ready to grow, I started being attractive to people who wanted to help me grow. So here it was. I finally, like I said, cracked down at the end of 2013, 2014 came about. And I was at work at one of my jobs one day. And this lady walked in, I'm just giving her amazing customer service. And that's what she says to me, like, oh my goodness, I love your customer service. I would love if you could come work for me in South Carolina and at this store called the Loft and Taylor. She's like, I'm the manager over there. What do you think about that? And guess what I immediately told her? Of course, I would love to if I can transfer the job to Atlanta. Do you see how because I had the desire to grow, it was no longer okay to just have the dream inside of my head. That was the creation. But it was my job as the creator of the dream, the purpose driven woman, to put myself in opportunities to grow. Right? Again, she could have gave me the job. I could have just went over there and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, stacked up money, still been in Savannah. But I immediately set the tone for what it was that I was looking for from her. Some of you have to start setting the tone now in your life of what you're looking for from people. It's the mindset shift that 6-figure owners must have. You have to start to set the tone as the leader of your life and then the future leader of other people's lives already, if you don't already have employees. It's that outgrowing the old version of yourself. The old version of me would have been scared to ask her about transferring and being in that position, but she immediately told me yes. So from there, I knew I was growing. I could foresee me getting to my next level faster. So, okay, fast forward, I start working at Carmex in 2015 and I get inside this corporate environment. It's my first corporate job. And so I'm seeing that this environment is different. It's fairly laxed and I like that. But again, I knew I was in growth mode. I knew that even if I thought at that time I was just climbing the corporate ladder, I wanted to make 6 figures in the corporate space, right? I wanted to be the best that I can be. I started to again realize, Breyel, if you don't just want to stay in collections, if you don't want to just stay with no time freedom, if you really want to grow, if you really want to have freedom in next level, I had to outgrow my old self. So what did I do? Instead of just working a job, and I'm giving you advice, you need to find somebody in that place of employment. You need to find somebody, even as a business owner, who is on the next level that you want to do. Be on and you have to reach out to them and ask for mentorship, ask for guidance, ask for partnership, ask for collaboration. Because again, when you surround yourself with people who can see your next level in you already, it's the inevitable that they will help you outgrow your old mindset. Sometimes you can't do it alone. You shouldn't really want to do it alone either. Six-figure owners know you cannot do it alone. You will eventually burn out, right? And so as I started looking for mentorship, I realized, ooh, Brielle, you're growing even more. So I found the women in the environment who I saw performing how I wanted to perform. Some of you women have to let go of this mindset of competition. You got to get into an energy of collaboration. You have to be open to people supporting you and for people to see that you're a grower and not just a creator, right? But again, kind of like how we talked about in the previous episode, what happens anyway when you do have somebody plant the seed inside of you? Do you actually water the seed? Do you nurture the seed? Or are you leading with the old version of yourself and doubting the seed? Are you doubting that you would do big things? Are you doubting that people would actually be there for you? Old versions of Everybody has old versions of themselves. It's just about how much you're willing to outgrow the old version. If you think about it, a seed is a seed until it's planted. I mean, you can eat some seeds, right? Like you can eat sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, and they're still powerful. But imagine the possibilities of the pumpkin once it's planted. Imagine the possibilities of a sunflower seed once it's planted. It can grow so much. The same one pumpkin seed grows multiple pumpkins. An acorn seed grows into an oak tree that can live to be 200 years. Even seeds have to outgrow themselves. It is a mindset that has to happen. But the difference between an inanimate object that's a seed and you is that you have to make the choice to outgrow the old version of yourself. And it's funny because the old version of yourself will tell you it's okay to stay the same. The old version of yourself will say, we don't need to grow no more than this. We're fine, right? Because when people start getting successful, that's when they start acting like, and that's when they start doing like, and that when people get money, then they old version of yourself's thoughts. The new version of yourself recognizes that the more you grow, the more you're an example to help others grow, right? You can't be so concerned about what the market is doing. You can't be so concerned about what the government is doing. You can't be so concerned about what your family members are doing. You only have the responsibility to be an example for you, especially if you have children. When do you see the value in shifting? Right? When do you see the value in saying, wow, you've been the same person for this long, and the friction is starting to get the best of you? How long are you okay with dealing with friction? It's Friction happens in everybody's lives. Again, no, nothing is perfect. But if we know that the friction is coming, sometimes the friction is mental. What are you doing? What steps are you taking to overcome the mental friction? Sometimes the friction is emotional. Do you know how emotional it was for me to have to break through the barrier of denouncing that me being talkative was a problem? Talkative is what got this podcast to where it is. Okay? Talkative is what helped me grow in the corporate space. But guess what? Even when I was in corporate and when I was undeveloped, when my character was not as developed as it could have been, I still was being reprimanded there in the corporate space for the way I was talkative, not even for the amount of talkative that I was doing. But even then, I was being reprimanded by saying like, wow, you're a bold communicator. Maybe you should change how you're talking. The way you speak sometimes is petty. I could have taken all of those things personal, but I took nothing personal because that is one of the four agreements. You got to stop taking things personal. You have to start really just being okay with recognizing that if somebody is giving any type of constructive criticism, it's just simply your responsibility to take a look at it and see how you can apply it to yourself. You may not feel like it's all of 100% the truth, but it could be a truth. And I truly believe that you're only brought scenarios for you to look at them as a mirror. The same goodness that you see in other people, the goodness is inside of yourself. That's the reason why you're seeing it. You just have to outgrow the old version of yourselves in order to get that level of goodness. And on the flip side, the negative that it may be so easy for you to see in others is the negative that you have within yourself. It's just your responsibility again to hold that mirror up and say, I see this negative in them. Does this mean that I have 100% the same amount of negative that they have in them that I see? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that maybe there's 2% of negative and it's something that you could fix, right? Outgrowing the old version of yourself means that you have to take inventory of the person that you are now. And then outgrowing the old version of yourself means that you have to use steady time and energy daily to stay in alignment with the person that you want to become. My new identity is billionaire Breyel, right? So billionaire Breyel has certain attributes and tributes and values and morals about herself that now on an everyday basis I think about, I affirm, and I implement inside of my life because that's the only way I will get to that level. I take the skills and the talents that I have now, which are still some of the ones that people used to make me feel bad about. But I take those and instead of focusing the rest of my life on who made me feel bad, when they made me feel bad, what they say, I dropped all of that. That's gone. It's of the past. And I'm present enough to say, how am I taking the constructive feedback that I got when I was 6, 10, 15, 20, 25, 32? How am I taking any of the constructive feedback that I ever got? And how am I looking at that through the lens and through the mirror of the woman that I want to become? You must do the exact same thing. What got you here may not be the same version of yourself that can get you to that next level. It's always a mindset shift. We talked about this in the previous episode, right? Growth happens internally through the subconscious mind before it ever happens in the conscious mind. That's why we live in a world and in a space of so many people that are talkers about the goals that they want to accomplish, but they're not walkers because it's easy to just talk all day. But the only people that walk are people that actually take the impact that they want to make and they reaffirm their subconscious mind because humans are creatures of habits, right? In the Business Confidence Academy, just last Sunday during our coaching call, I taught the women about cognitive behavioral therapy, and we're learning about habit formation because, again, people, you will talk all day about what it is that you say you want. You will run the people who you're closest to in the ground about all the things you say you want. But the only way you're going to be a walker of the things that you actually talk about is if you change the habits that you do on an everyday basis. It's not easy to change habits. If that was the case, everybody would be accomplishing the goals that they want. But many people don't accomplish the goals. They take their gifts, skills, and talents and it goes to the grave with them. But while they're alive, they point all of their fingers at others and can talk about everything that everybody else can do. But when you look at their life, when you look at your life, you still have that doubt and you still have that friction because you can't seem to figure out what's happening in yours. It's because it's time for you to start walking. But walking is not as easy as it is to talk because walking takes you outgrowing the old version of yourself. I know you can't do it alone, so I'm inviting you to jump on a one-on-one discovery call with me. You can click the link below, and in the link on the call, We will simply talk about what the new version of yourself looks like. And then I'll help you get clear during that call on some of the limiting beliefs that you're having about the person who you can become and help you get clear on what is the version of you that got you here. Because we're not saying it's all bad. Of course, it's not, right? You wouldn't be a business owner. You wouldn't have success. You wouldn't have the receipts to prove where you are is valid if it was all bad. But real entrepreneurs, real leaders know that even as a great leader, you still deserve development. I have a life coach. I have a business coach. I have a therapist. I have those people in my life to help me see the versions of me that I can't see because I can't get to Billionaire Breyel on my own. I can't. I have to have people that can help me outgrow the old version of myself. And I want you to have someone who can help you outgrow the old version of you also. So click the link down below. Let's hop on this one-on-one call and let's really help you see the mindset shift that the six-figure plus owners must make. As always, I'm super excited to help you create and grow your dream business. And until next time, I'll speak with you soon. See you later.